It is Birds 365. We've had this duo up before as co-hosts. We planned on punching him up as a guest, and I guess he is still a guest. It's just my co-host has disappeared. Johnny Mack has had some technical issues today here on Birds 365. Don't know if it was weather-related or not, but I'm okay to go with Jeff Kerr for the next however many minutes until Johnny Mack jumps back on from CBSSports.com. JK, how you doing?
Pretty good, Jody. It's been a crazy week around the NFL, as you certainly know. It's been, I didn't even really get to keep track of a bunch of the Eagles cuts. Like, I knew they cut Travis Fulgham and a couple other guys, but I kept hearing, hey, did you hear Ty Johnson got cut? Did you hear Kiki Kuti got cut? All these receivers. And, you're trying to put everything around. And I had to track I think it was like a total of 600 cuts around the NFL on Tuesday. It's pretty insane.
There were a ton of cuts and 27 guys who were claimed off waivers. You mentioned the former Charger receiver who was grabbed by Jacksonville, probably with the first overall waiver claim. The Eagles ended up not claiming a wide receiver. We speculated yesterday if they were going to make a claim, that position seemed to jump out more than any others with the availability of the guys who are out there on the wire. Surprised that the Eagles didn't get a wide receiver as far as the claim goes?
I mean, here's the thing, Jody. We don't know if they actually put in a claim for Ty Johnson because he went to Jacksonville, obviously. In Jacksonville, they could have claimed 53 guys if they wanted to. That's just how waivers work. But, yeah, I was kind of surprised. I thought maybe Colin Johnson, because of Dave Caldwell, picked him. And, he kind of had a strong finish for them last year, had the repetitions with Gardner Minshew. Maybe that would be something. But overall, there just wasn't that much available outside of Ty Johnson, at least in my opinion. They did get Keyshawn Johnson from the Arizona Cardinals, and Cliff Kingsbury spoke very highly of him when he cut him. He said, it was just tough to cut him, but overall, just the Cardinals are really deep at wide receiver. So the Eagles were able to get him, but I was kind of shocked. I thought maybe they put in a claim for one of those two players earlier.
And they did bring back two guys to their practice squad at the receiver position, both Fulgham and Hightower, guys who were here last year, and we all know Travis Fulgham's story. He had a group of games that he was one of the better wide receivers in the league, not just the best wide receiver on the Eagles. He matched up with any other wide receiver in the league. But prior to that, he hadn't done much. After that, he didn't done much with a lot of speculation as to why that was the case. His explanation was, well, they didn't put him out there. They didn't give him enough reps in the offense. They didn't call his number often enough with Alshon Jeffrey being activated. Well, okay, maybe, but maybe you didn't get open enough. Maybe you didn't show it in practice enough. There seemed to be enough of a debate and maybe even a disconnect that I wasn't sure Travis Fulgham was going to come back. When no one claimed Travis Fulgham, which I saw national speculation yesterday that he was the guy who absolutely could get picked off the waiver wire, he didn't. The Eagles decided to bring him back. Do you think that Travis Fulgham is going to get elevated and make a contribution on this team this year?
I think he could. I think right now, I think he needs to get his game straight. It seemed like his excuse was, as you pointed out, Jody, the whole Alshon Jeffrey thing. Well, they just didn't play me. They played Alshon over me. Well, no, you had a game where you played like 95% of the snaps and you had one catch for 8 yards. And then they went to Alshon Jeffrey, and he had like 7 catches for 110 yards or around that number the last 7-8 games of the season. And that's just not good. That's J.J. Arcega-Whiteside territory. And ultimately, it came down to special teams, and Arcega-Whiteside probably earned his job over that, and the fact that he had a really good last preseason game, and Fulgham didn't, but he just struggled, and it continued on throughout training camp this year. It's, Johnny Mack obviously pointed out, he was barely getting any reps. He was with the second team at some point. So I'm like, I wonder if this guy's going to get claimed by anybody. And he obviously didn't. And when I was talking to just a couple people around the league, they were like, okay, everybody thinks it was more of a 5-game fluke, or, someone actually pointed out to me, they were trailing in a lot of those games. Remember that? And they were just kind of trying to stay in the game. And that's when he was making a lot of his catches. So I'm like, okay, so what's the deal here? Like, is this guy good? Is this guy bad? And I'm just thinking to myself, well, I think the Eagles are kind of lucky they were able to get him back. I don't know if he'll actually be promoted to the 53 like in the next couple of days. We'll see. But overall, I do expect him back on this roster this year at some point. I don't know how much he's going to contribute, though.
You referenced J.J. Arcega-Whiteside, who certainly made the team. We know he was a second-round draft pick. You mentioned that he had that good final exhibition game, but John's reports from practice all year long, inconsistent certainly would be a way to describe him again. Then again, the only guy who was consistent practicing all the time seemed to be Quez Watkins. So you could put all the wide receivers into that same category. But Arcega-Whiteside gets a spot on the roster while Hightower and Fulgham have to go practice squad. How much faith do you have that we actually see an improvement in J.J. Arcega-Whiteside this year?
If there is an improvement, I'm going to give full credit to Nick Sirianni, Aaron Moorhead, Shane Steichen, and those guys, and even Jalen Hurts, because the Eagles have gotten practically nothing out of this guy. And I know everybody likes to point out DK Metcalf. Well, other teams passed on DK Metcalf too. The Indianapolis Colts with Paris Campbell, the Arizona Cardinals with Andy Isabella, who, again, Steve Keim swallowed his pride a little bit. I know Isabella was on the COVID list, but he was a second-round pick, and he kept him over probably a guy like Keyshawn Johnson, who you could argue should have been on the Cardinals over Andy Isabella just based on his skill set. But they like what they saw out of Isabella his second year or his first year in the league, and the averaging over 20 yards per catch, and they decided to hold tight, keep faith in him. And I think that's what the Eagles are looking at right now. I think the maturation process for a wide receiver does take longer in the NFL. It's kind of like a defensive end. He could break out this year. I don't think that's going to be the case. But overall, I think what J.J. Arcega-Whiteside just needs to do, at least in my eyes, to be a guy who can contribute to his football team, catch the football in the red zone. Like, find a way to get open 2 or 3 times a game and make your mark. I'm not asking this guy to be a superstar anymore. I'm just asking him to be competent, just be a factor, which he clearly hasn't been. I don't think he's done anything really since Carson Wentz's first when he beat the Cowboys in Week 16. That first catch he made to kind of get that upset going, the first play of the game. That's the only time I think he's done something of relevance for this football team. He can find a way to just help this team or step up when one of these guys get hurt, because it's the NFL. Everybody's going to get hurt. So I'm looking at it as, look, just do your job. But overall, they need help at that wide receiver position badly.
And they only ended up keeping 5, which did surprise me a little bit. And the only thing that surprised me even more was that they kept only 3 running backs, because Nick Sirianni did during the preseason mention that they're going to be a team that attacks with running back by committee, that it's not going to be a bell cow back system where one guy is the lead guy and everyone else is just sprinkled in. He wants to get production out of all of his running backs. Well, that shouldn't be that hard because he's only got 3. Most teams keep a minimum of 4. Some even will go as far as 5 if they got a fullback. But that's not part of the Eagles' concepts. 3 running backs. We know Miles Sanders is the lead dog. How is Sirianni going to make this work? If you get them out into the flat and you throw them the football and they're part of the pass game, that's good, but you're also putting them as much at risk doing that as running them between the tackles. How are the Eagles going to get through with only 3 running backs?
Well, this is what I'm curious, Jody. Maybe McMullen pointed this out earlier, but have they put Tyree Jackson officially on the IR yet?
I don't believe so.
Well, maybe
it's going to happen. It's going to happen, but it just they don't need to do it until whatever day, Tuesday, whenever the day is that they decide, all right, we need to have all of our practice guys in place. It's going to happen. There's no way he's going to be active. It doesn't make sense to have a guy on the 53, even if he's just inactive. We know it's going to happen. The only question is, how long is Jackson going to be out?
That's what I'm curious about. See, when they do eventually put him on IR, I wonder if that clears the spot up for Jordan Howard to come back. And then they have their 4 running backs. Because I thought it was big he was able to come back to the practice squad. I mean, he could have went wherever he wanted. But really, who wants him at this point? It just seems like the only team that is interested in him is the Eagles. And I'm beginning to wonder, okay, so will that extra roster spot go to a running back, or maybe they acquire a wide receiver in the next couple days? But overall, yeah, I like the 3 they got, obviously. I think Scott's going to contribute this year. Kenny Gainwell, I think that this was a sign that Kenny Gainwell's going to have a much bigger role. He was great in that last preseason game, and Scott was to an extent. It's kind of crazy to think that Miles Sanders may be the worst pass-catching back out of the 3 of them, and he's honestly a really good catcher when he catches the football. So, yards after the catch are going to be big for this offense. I think they're going to really rely on those 3 to kind of get the passing game going. If Jalen Hurts can connect on those swing passes and, kind of get. I think we're going to see a lot of screens, kind of Andy Reid-esque this year. So I'm really curious to see how they use all three and how they balance their snaps. But I wouldn't be surprised if Jordan Howard or Jason Huntley or someone like that got elevated over the next couple of days.
Running back is definitely a possibility. Wide receiver also. And I think, can you go with just 5 cornerbacks if you're facing off against a team that's going to be in 4 wide receiver sets plenty? And, oh, by the way, some people would believe with their new tight end, it's going to be 5 wide receiver sets. They could be 4 wide receivers and Pitts who split out. They're not going to have them inline blocking. So I would think that you need as many DBs as you can get your hands on. If you're asking me what position do you think is going to grab Tyree Jackson's spot when he moves to IR, I think somewhere in the defensive backfield might even grab a precedent just for week number 1 against Atlanta than either the extra running back or the wide receiver.
Yeah, that is an excellent point. Just because Kyle Pitts, I think they recorded he has the biggest wingspan of any receiver in NFL history, and he's a tight end. So, that's going to be really scary to see how they defend Calvin Ridley, a Russell Gage, a Kyle Pitts. It's going to be tough to go with 5 cornerbacks. You're going to have to get a hybrid guy in there somewhere. Maybe that's why they kept as many linebackers as they did, or they're trying to dangle one around so they could trade for a defensive back. That's what's going to be interesting for me. I just don't know outside of, and again, I like their top 4. I just worry about like a Josiah Scott, or maybe they bring back Craig James from the practice squad, elevate him. That was a surprise cut to me, Jody. That was the one where I was like, okay, like, what are they doing here? I know he was injured a little bit in camp, but I kind of figured he was going to stick around.
So did I. John and I discussed that at length, and I think John said in his pick the 53-man roster competition that he's in versus other Eagle beat writers, that was one that he did get wrong because he thought Craig James was going to make it. All right. I do want to get your take on the Eagles QB3. John and I were discussing him before we punched you up. I'll give Gardner Minshew credit. I guess I'd give the Eagles some credit too, because they waited a couple of days before they made him available and probably schooled him pretty well on what the Philadelphia media was going to ask. And he gave all the right answers. He checked all the right boxes. Both John and I had a little concern that he's a competitive guy who's going to come in here and rock the boat a little bit. Didn't sound like that yesterday. Were you buying what Gardner was selling, that he's just happy to be in Philadelphia, will do whatever it takes to have this team win, and if he's the QB3, he'll learn to deal with it?
Right now, he may be saying that because he still has to learn the offense and learn the system, but I do think he really did want to be here. It seemed like from a couple of reports I saw, he kind of wanted to get out of Jacksonville since really May or June, which kind of makes sense. Trevor Lawrence was the starter, and Jacksonville continued that charade. More Urban Meyer continued that charade. Oh, Trevor Lawrence is in a competition for the starting quarterback job, which we all knew that wasn't true. I think that was just a way of trying to up Gardner Minshew's value in training camp in the preseason so they could deal him for what they dealt him for. And they still – I mean, Jacksonville did win that trade in a sense. Not with the Eagles, but overall, you acquired a 6th-round pick for a guy you drafted in the 6th round, a quarterback nonetheless. So I thought that was pretty impressive in and of itself. But overall, I think Gardner Minshew is eventually going to be the number 2 quarterback of this football team. And if Jalen Hurts struggles, he's going to be there waiting for his opportunity to prove he should be a starter in this league again. And I think that's what this year is about for Gardner Minshew. It's kind of showcasing the teams, maybe the Eagles, even as one of them. Hey, I can be a starting quarterback in this league. Look, I'm better than Daniel Jones. And the numbers say it. He is better than Daniel Jones at this point. And Daniel Jones is starting quarterback, and I'm not. And I think he's going to have that swagger. It's, again, there were a couple of stories of East Carolina. I forget the guys. Philip Nelson. He was competing with to be the starting quarterback there. And, he had a riff with the coaches because he was better than Philip Nelson. And, they were kind of rotating them at that point. I don't think it'll ever be like that. I just think that's a kid, trying to compete for playing time. But overall here, I think he's just going to try to learn the offense for the first couple of weeks, build his stock up, and then if Jalen Hurts, gets injured or struggles, I don't think he's going to struggle, but if he gets injured, Gardner Minshew is going to be ready to pounce.
If you are Nick Sirianni, and at some point you need to make a call about who gives us the best chance to win on any given week, when Jalen Hurts goes down with an injury, you're judging purely on practice, and that's a tough go. The joint practices against other teams, good way to judge. The exhibition games, I think, a good way to judge, although it was diminished this year by being cut to only 3, and the way that it was handled by a lot of National Football League teams and coaches seemed to be less valued and evaluative than it's ever been before. Behind all of those is trying to judge in practice who's the better player. And Joe Flacco and Gardner Minshew have now had a handful of practices together at best, which you're trying to be able to pick who's the better of the two. I think it's pretty difficult to do. Flacco actually did play real well in that final preseason game against his other former team. Everyone thinks of him as a Raven, but he was a Jet for 1 year, and he did play well and looks like he could be a good backup quarterback. How difficult is it going to be on Sirianni when he makes that decision on whatever week it is? Could be week 3, could be week 5. At some point, he's got to say, well, we haven't activated Gardner yet. We've been hiding behind the pretense of he's still learning the offense. If he hasn't been activated by like week 7, the questions are going to start to pop up. How dumb is Gardner that he can't pick up your system, that you still haven't activated him for a game yet? When is that going to happen, if you believe it is, that he's going to jump to number 2 on the depth chart?
I think it's going to be sooner rather than later, Jody. And you're right. If it is going to be by week 7, yeah, the questions are going to come out. Like, is this guy smart? Maybe the NFL knows something about this guy that we didn't until the Eagles acquired him. But I think it's going to be, I will say, maybe as soon as the first home game, because he's going to have this week, next week, the following week. That's 3 weeks there. That's more than enough time to learn that playbook. He's probably studying that playbook right now as we speak, or, getting the basis of this offense. Now, I don't think he'll be a number 2 quarterback the first week of the year, maybe the second week for the home opener, but I don't know. It's going to be difficult for him to kind of unseat Flacco this early in the process. So I will go like a week 3, week 4, but I wouldn't be surprised if it was a week 2.
All right. We've been spending a lot of time talking about who's quarterback 2 and who's quarterback 3. How about quarterback 1? Jalen Hurts finally named as the starting quarterback of the Eagles. And that's another pet peeve. I didn't say this with you. I said it with John the other day. I'm a little ticked off at Nick Sirianni. Oh, I'll get over it. But you guys should have known he was the number 1 because he took all the reps. You were asked almost on a daily basis, and you kept saying that, well, we don't need to name a starter just yet. So his backhanded, well, you guys should have known comment did annoy me a little bit, but I digress. Jalen Hurts is going to be the starter. We knew he was going to be the starter. The question is, did he get enough practice time in games? We saw the joint practices, but we know he only took 10 snaps in the 3 preseason games. Do you have concerns that week number 1, he might not be as up to speed as he needs to be to win a National Football League game on the road?
Joey, I'm going to add to your pet peeve here. We did a story on CBS on Sirianni naming Hurts to start, and I said, is this necessary right now? Like, he took every snap with the first team. This was obvious. Like, why are we wasting internet space on this? But I digress. So, yeah, I am a little concerned about more of a slow start than anything else. Like, I hope it just doesn't take him a half. He goes like 4 for 12 in the first half or like 50 yards and barely makes any plays, and the Eagles are trailed by 14 at halftime because he did not play in the preseason. And Sirianni can say all he wants about those practices, and I agree. They do play first team versus first team in their practices, which is a little different than how Doug did it. But overall, I'm concerned about lack of live game reps. And I think it was Tony Romo. Yeah, Tony Romo actually said this yesterday. He wanted 2 series in the preseason. This is all he asked for, just to get the feel. 1 series at home and 1 series on the road, because he said that kind of gets the juice going for the regular season. And Jalen Hurts didn't get any on the road, and he barely played at home. So he did get his 1 series at home, but he hasn't – he started road games in the NFL. But this is a completely different animal. We didn't know Carson Wentz was coming back. He was more of a week-to-week type of thing at the end of the year. Now he's a full-time starting quarterback, and there's a guy lurking over his shoulder in Gardner Minshew. As much as we want to deny it, he's going to be there. Same with Joe Flacco. And if he struggles, I know how it's going to be. I'm watching old Eagles games from the Ray Rhodes era, And it's the same thing with Rodney Peete. He was never like the starter. And it's like, okay, so when's this guy going to get benched because he keeps playing it? That's what I don't want to see out of Jalen Hurts, because the coach didn't want to play him that much in the preseason. Patrick Mahomes played a lot in the preseason. Ben Roethlisberger did. A lot of the veteran coaches decided to play their guys while the younger coaches did not. And I don't know. I'm really curious to see how that ends up in the regular season. But, yeah, I mean, that should be a storyline going into week 1. It's, did this quarterback, did this first-team offense play enough in the preseason to knock it out to a slow start? Because this is a beatable team in Atlanta.
I'm not sure if I'm impressed or perplexed by the fact that you always tell me, went back and watching YouTube, the Ray Rhodes era. You're always checking in with the history of the Eagles. I don't know what to make of that, Kerr, but that's okay.
I watch a lot of Buddy Ryan games, too. Yeah, I'm just on Ray Rhodes right now. I'm on that.
Okay. He loves his history of the Philadelphia Eagles, does Jeff Kerr. All right, we didn't have you on since the Eagles did cut down their roster, and a couple things J Mac and I have chopped up and discussed, little surprises in the decisions that the Eagles made. 7 linebackers, 7. This is not your old Jim Schwartz defense that they actually are expecting the linebackers to contribute and make plays. And yes, we believe Singleton is going to be the #1 guy overall, but they do have depth at that position. What did you read into the linebacker number being as deep as 7 that the Eagles committed to on their 53?
I think the Eagles looked at it as, we got 7 guys we really don't want to cut. And this is a deep position. And dare I say it, good. Like Eric Wilson, he's going to be a good starter for this team. Alex Singleton, we know what he can do. The guy just made plays all last year and all preseason. I don't expect that to drop. I did not want them cutting Sean Bradley, and I'm glad that they kept him around. I feel he's going to be a valuable special teams asset for this unit. Davion Taylor, he might go on IR, so it might go down to 6. But overall, like, he had a good training camp before he got hurt. This is a line. TJ Edwards is another good player. I really like the state of the linebacker position for the Eagles. I mean, it must have been tough for them because I don't know what McMullen saw, but from what I was hearing, Jacoby Stevens had a pretty decent camp too. And Warren, they're just really deep at linebacker. And who would have thought that? And, you know, you're obviously using Jannard Avery at that Sam position. I think Ryan Kerrigan's going to play a little bit there too. So they're going to have pass rushers. And I'll tell you what, Jody, just from the linebacking position being better, I can't believe I saw this on Caesars William Hill Sportsbook. For the Eagles to lead the NFL in sacks, it's plus 3,000. I'm taking that bet because I think they can seriously do that. Their pass rush is better than last year, and they were 3rd in the NFL in sacks, and they were 5th in pressures. So I'm looking at it as, okay, you know, this is a pretty good best bet right now. You know, you put a couple bucks on it, and they seriously can do that. And I just like the way this defense is going. I think Jonathan Gannon really – honestly, if he had a poker hand, we wouldn't know what it was. Like, he probably would have won with a pair of 3s at this point.
30-1 is a damn good play. If you're accurate on those odds, I would maybe ask you to slice off a little piece for your buddy, Jody Mack here. I'd go in on you. I'd go in with you on that one because, yeah, I think they will get after the quarterback, certainly with the new defense coordinator whose philosophy of hits does include getting turnovers, which we all know you can't handicap. But one of the ways you can do that is, but getting to a quarterback and making him cough up the football. I'm not even talking strip. I'm talking shot on or tip and the like. I think they will be aggressive at trying to get to the quarterback this year. So I like your line of thinking. How are they going to get that? Well, we know outside rush, pressure up the middle with their good DTs. Williams is going to get a shot somewhere, either inside or outside, as a rookie contributing. What do you think that he's got up his sleeve, the defensive coordinator, because he has said on several occasions, deception is the key to life, and he's going to try and deceive other teams, not see it coming when he throws certain things at him. Project for us a little bit here, buddy. What do you think he's got up his sleeve?
I think you're going to see multiple fronts, and I think it's going to depend on the matchup. Like, for week 1, I wouldn't be shocked if he went like a 4-2-5, you know, again, or maybe even a 3-3-5 just because, and have a coverage linebacker in there for Kyle Pitts, whoever that may be. It's going to be interesting to see how that changes week to week because I think that's what they were working on in camp. It's, you know, Fletcher Cox said, okay, like sometimes we're going to do a 3-man front, sometimes we're going to do a 4-man front. And again, I think it's going to depend on the matchup. I don't think it's going to be, this is my way and this is how we're going to do it. It's not like a Mandalorian thing. This is the way. No, it's the way is going to switch every week. And that's how I'm curious to see how the matchup works. And I remember I'm trying to remember the defense coordinator that did. Oh, Emmett Thomas was one of those guys. He always kind of switched every week. And honestly, he got the most out of what he got when he was defense coordinator of the Eagles and a bunch of other teams. So I think Jonathan Gannon's going to be the same, only he has the talent to do it. It's more of, are you going to pick the right matchup? And I have a feeling he is, but what I'm concerned is with this team. I think they're going to really, really struggle sometimes against pass-heavy teams unless that pass rush gets to the quarterback. And I think that's what he has to be more creative with. How can we get to the quarterback quick and not have them beat us on the deep ball? I think that's one of the reasons why Steven Nelson is here, honestly.
And so far, so good. He's looked good in practice, and it could end up being one of the key offseason additions for the Philadelphia Eagles this year. All right, JK, you're reporting for CBS. You have a heavy Philadelphia lean, but you do check out the entire National Football League. I do want to ask you about an ex-Eagle player and also an ex-Patriot player. That would be Asante Samuel, who yesterday was quoted as saying, Bill Belichick is just another coach without Tom Brady. Canceled the Asante Samuel retirement jersey day in New England if he's going to go down that road. I get where he's coming from, and in the who was more important to the Patriots' success, put it on a scale and weigh it out. Certainly Brady is taking the lead, doing what he did last year for Tampa, and Big Bill not making the playoffs at all with the Patriots. Can you get away with making a statement like Bill Belichick is just another coach without Tom Brady? Can Asante Samuel get away with that?
I mean, if he really wants to dig deeper into this, I have a graphics package for him that shows, he's 60 and 71 without Tom Brady, or it's around those numbers. He's under 500 without Tom Brady as his quarterback. I think he only has one playoff win, if I'm correct, without Tom Brady as his quarterback. But overall, I kind of wanted to say to Asante Samuel, because I've talked to him in the past, Brady and Bill should have an extra Super Bowl, but I don't want to relive a Super Bowl 42 memory for him, because he dropped the pass from Eli Manning that would have sealed the game literally right before David Tyree had the helmet catch. So, I don't know. I don't think Asante Samuel was well liked in New England. I don't think he, really wanted to come back there, obviously, because he signed that big deal with the Eagles. But, Bill Belichick, he'll probably brush it off. And honestly, Asante Samuel helped Bill Belichick beat the Philadelphia Eagles in Super Bowl 39, because I remember going into that game and starting thinking to myself, okay, William Gay and Asante Samuel, they're not, the starter. They're not the starters here, even though they started the second half of the year and played really well. I thought Don McNabb and T.O. and Todd Pinkston and all those guys could basically torch them, and they threw for a lot of yards against them, but they were able to make a lot of key plays on third down. So Asante Samuel was really beneficial to that defense over the years, and maybe Asante Samuel is coming off with, okay, Brady was the big reason for it, and maybe he was kind of critiquing the Patriot way, but that defense is really good those first three Super Bowls, and they were really good in the year they started 18-0. So I don't think, again, and I am one of the big proponents, the Patriot way was Tom Brady, but let's not discredit the defense and the should be Hall of Famers on that defense. I think Richard Seymour is going to be one of those guys that eventually gets in. Like Teddy Bruschi will not be a Hall of Famer, but he was a pretty good linebacker. Lawyer Malloy was a really good safety for that team. Ty Law, again, I'm pretty sure he's in the Hall of Fame. I got to double check that. But, he was really good for them. There were a lot of guys. Maybe Asante Samuel was going off the fact that a lot of those guys on those defense were in that Super Bowl against the Packers in '96. Man, I'm really curious to see what he truly meant by that than just a blanket statement.
Glad to say smart minds think alike, because doing shows in New York, you can tick off Giant fans pretty quickly when you get the Giants were a little lucky to win that Super Bowl. And I'm not referencing the Tyree catch, because there's a little luck involved there too, but it was also a hell of an individual effort by Tyree to keep composed, keep focused, and be able to put it to his helmet. Yeah, Asante Samuel dropped an interception. It was in his hands. He makes that pick. He got a different. That's where the luck came in. The luck of the Giants winning that game was more the Asante Samuel drop than the actual Tyree catch. But again, going forward, we were supposed to have Vinny Serrato on, former Washington general manager, and now does talk shows down in Baltimore. I want to get into this with him. I'll get into it with you instead. I'm a big John Harbaugh fan. I like the coach a lot. I think he's great. He continues to win preseason games. I'm sure he wishes he could add them to his regular season record. He does have a Super Bowl championship in his back pocket. That's the toughest division in the AFC, bar none. Cleveland, Pittsburgh, the Ravens. Cincinnati has the right to be better. It all comes down to Burrow's health, and we'll see about that. I don't think they're a playoff factor, but they could be better and be a little bit of a bigger pain in the butt to everybody else in that division. Ravens severely compromised to start the season with their offensive weapons. We know they lose Dobbins the entire year. Yesterday, we find out 2 wide receivers starting the year on IR, Bateman and Boykin. If you were going to think about picking Baltimore in that division, it became a little bit more difficult with the injury announcements that they came out with yesterday, didn't it?
Yeah, and irony is, Jody, I picked Baltimore to win that division. And
still, or before the injuries came out?
This is before Dobbins. So I made my pick to CBS, and they asked, do I want to change it? And I'm stubborn, so I said no, because
okay, good for you. I like it.
Yeah, I'm pretty high on
Gus. I'm going to be wrong, but I like it just the same.
I could be really wrong here, but I was all in on the whole J.K. Dobbins, Gus Edwards thing. I think Gus Edwards now is going to have a monster year because I thought he was really good to begin with. And now you got Lamar in there. And again, everybody likes to get on Lamar for his throwing ability. Who's he throwing to? Like, he has no one. He has Marquise Brown and Sammy Watkins now, and that's about it. Because you said Bateman's out, Boykin's out. Mark Andrews is going to have a big year again at tight end. He'd be a guy, if you didn't make your fantasy draft yet, that'd be a guy I would probably draft just on that merit. But overall, their defense is still really good. I think Pittsburgh is still going to be good. I really liked what I saw out of Najee Harris and that offensive line this preseason. Getting Joe Schobert from Jacksonville, I think, is a big move for them. Cleveland's good. They're going to be good. I don't think Cleveland's going to take a fall from last year because Kevin Stefanski's a really good coach, and he knows how to make Baker Mayfield more of a game manager. Like, he made him a game manager, but he's like a good game manager. Like, he can beat you with his arm. Because Baker Mayfield was done before last year. Like, I thought it's, okay, this guy might be a bust. And Kevin Stefanski fixed him, and that's what good coaches do. So they're going to be in on it, but overall, it's tough to bet against John Harbaugh and Lamar Jackson. And I think the key for this team is they are really, really good on the road, and they're really good at home. And I think 12 wins is going to be enough. I think Baltimore is good enough to get 12 wins. I don't know if they're going to be a Super Bowl team or not, but I think in this division, teams are going to beat each other up, and Baltimore is good enough to withstand all that heat.
Very difficult division. I think the NFC West is the toughest division in all of football because I think all 4 teams could potentially be playoff teams. In the AFC North, I think 3 out of the 4, sorry, Cincinnati fans, could be in a playoff conversation. So those are the 2 toughest. All right, we're going to get our final time out of the day in. Johnny Mac's still having serious technical issues. Hopefully he's okay. His neighborhood apparently hard hit last one night with Ida. His whole neighborhood is down power-wise. So we were lucky enough to have Jeff Kerr ready to rock and roll. He'll come back and help me put a bow on the show here on this edition of Birds 365.
If you missed any of today's show on the JAKIB Media channel, listen to the podcast on your way home. Available on YouTube, Apple, and Spotify.